Thanks for staying with us on SABC News. Pick n Pay is offering its consumers credit to buy food and groceries. Debt counsellors have condemned the move, saying it will harm consumers in the long run. Deputy CEO of Pick n Pay, Richard van Rensburg, joins me in studio now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. What led to the decision to grant credit to consumers?
Well, thank you for...
By his own words...
First of all, let me correct a misconception. There's no way that Pick n Pay is wanting to grant credit to over-indebted consumers. We've never said that we want to do that. It was a statement made by some debt counsellors without even speaking to us about who we're wanting to target. A second misconception maybe that I could share with you is that consumers do today buy food on credit, a lot of it. More than 50% of our sales are conducted by consumers who are using credit. And it's very interesting to look and see who those consumers are. So if you look at the tender types that we accept, credit cards, debit cards and cash, 80% of our customers pay us with cash, but only account for about 20% of our sales. On the other hand, about 5% of our customers use credit cards, and that by definition is a credit sale, but they account for 25% of our sales. So wealthy people are buying food on credit. Why are they doing that? Because the kind of credit you get where you pay your account off in full every month is by far the cheapest way to buy your food. That's why wealthy people are doing it. But then there's a middle group of consumers who are the ones that we're concerned about. It's about 15% of our consumers, and they use debit cards to buy food. And they account for about 50% of our sales. But there's lots of studies that show that more than 60% of those consumers, and they're middle-class South Africans, LSMs 5 to 9, earning between 20 and 30,000 Rand a month, probably a family where both couples are working, that kind of middle-class South Africa. About 60% of them have got unsecured debt, which is very expensive debt, and they are using the proceeds of that unsecured debt to fund their food purchases. Now, we wanted to introduce a credit product that's more widely available to our middle-class consumer that our rich consumers are using to buy food, because it lowers the total cost of the food spend, and that's what we've been targeting.
When the story came out, there was a lot of concern by debt counsellors that even though you've explained this kind of profile where you're not perhaps, you're trying to say to us it's not a predatory kind of lending because
Absolutely
it's a middle class, it's a middle class consumer. South Africans are over indebted. South Africans are struggling. So is it responsible to say to someone who perhaps is over indebted, even though they are middle class, here's some more credit, get more in debt?
We won't grant credit to people like that. People who are over indebted won't qualify for the credit. I think what the debt counsellor who made the statement also didn't inform us about the changes that have been happening to the national credit regulations. We've got a fantastic act that protects consumers. It's not legal to lend money to someone who's over indebted.
Okay. Perhaps I can ask you then, a person goes in, gets this credit from Pick n Pay for up to I think 40,000 Rand.
Yes.
What happens when these 55 days lapse and they cannot pay for the purchases that they've made? What are the penalties for them?
If a customer decides to not pay their full account at the end of 55 days and extend it onto budget, then we charge interest, or RCS charges interest. And the interest is the normal NCA interest rate. There's no penalty rates or anything like that. It's 20.75%, which is the normal rate that everyone pays. There's no other charges. A customer can pay off their minimum balance if that's what they want to do. We're encouraging customers not to do that. The financially savvy customers who are using credit to buy food don't do that. And our whole product and marketing is focused around suggesting you pay off your food bill earlier.
Someone, when I tweeted about this, someone said, you know, imagine being blacklisted for a bunch of coup baked beans.
That would
be
terrible. So
you're saying there's only this 20.75% interest and there's no other consequences if you don't pay, or could it be that there is a blacklisting that will take place?
No, so what happens is, if you can pay off a minimum balance if that's what you choose to do. If you go into default, We have negotiated with RCS, who's the credit provider. We're not providing the credit. We've negotiated with RCS that they go through an 8-month process with the consumer of trying to help them sort their debt out. If they don't sort their debt out at the end of 8 months, in the 9th month, we'll make a decision what to do with that consumer. It'll depend on the personal circumstances of the consumer. But it'll only be at that point that there will be those kinds of consequences for the consumer if that's what they do. But I just want to emphasize that we're not focusing on those types of consumers. If you want to apply for a store account at Pick n Pay, you have to give us 3 months bank statements, you have to prove your income, and only then, and you have to prove that you can afford it by giving us a budget. And we have to validate that data. Once we've done that, and it comes out accurately, then we will grant you credit.
How much uptake are you expecting? And also you've said you're trying to disrupt the space and the lending space with this. Take us through that.
Okay, so I'll talk about the uptake, because that's also a little bit been blown out of proportion. I saw Capitec announce their results yesterday, and they mentioned in their results that they're acquiring 106,000 new customers every month, which is fantastic. I've got a huge amount of respect for that management team. If we acquired 100,000 customers in a whole year, we'd be flabbergasted. So it's a very small segment of our customers who we are wanting to help be more loyal with us. That's our target market. So the uptake is in that magnitude. I forgot, what was your second question?
You said you're trying to disrupt the lending space.
Yes. You know, we've been looking at trying to find ways to make shopping with us cheaper. And the cost of credit is exorbitantly high. And you're absolutely right. South Africans are massively over-debted. There's 1.7 trillion rands worth of debt that South Africans are bearing. About 13% of that is in the form of credit cards and store cards and overdrafts. The rest is unsecured loans and bonds, etc. But the costs are incredibly high. And if you look at the fees that credit providers often charge us, when we take out the credit, the interest rate is not so much what you need to look at, it's the other charges. So we've tried to design a product. We're not taking any profits out of it. We've tried to design a product that's got none of those costs in it. And we're hoping that that will put pressure on the
risks are quite
costs.
Richard van Rensburg, thanks so much for your time on SABC News.